legislation are proceeding slowly but steadily at the House of Representatives. The latest development, a hybrid constitutional convention approved to initiate changes to the charter.
Gabriela Partiles Representative Arlene Brosas strongly opposed the bill, especially its emoluments provision, where every delegate shall be entitled to receive 10,000 pesos per diem or per day of attendance in the convention. The government will also pay for the travel and lodging expenses.
Yung 10,000 na ibibigay sa kada araw, nalalahok sa delegado ng CONCON. Sabi namin kanina, halos minimum wage na ito ng isang manggagawa sa isang buwan.
Yung 10,000 mo back and forth, tamang-tama lang yun sa airplane.
Correct.
So, what
Ano,
can you do with
Richard,
the
kasi
10,000?
10,000 sa
That's the
plane
real,
fare lang, umubos na. Ano pagkain naman ng delegate dito sa Manila?
Para kay Senator Robin Hood Padilla, na chairman ng Senate Committee on Constitutional Amendments, sobrang mahal niyan. Kung siya raw ang masusunod, Constituent Assembly o CONAS dapat ang gawing paraan ng pag-amyenda ng saligang batas.
Ang dami pong issue dyan, ma'am, na kailangan natin. Una, papayag ba ang taong bayan dyan? Napakamahal niyan. Sobrang mahal yan. Naglabas yung NEDA. Eleksyon pa lang, 28 billion na. Wala pa yung gastos ng pasweldo sa mga CONCON delegates. Opisina nila. Siyempre, meron din yan. Malaki yan, ma'am. Malaki yan. Economic provision lang tayo talaga muna. Sa akin, doon lang muna tayo sa pinakamatipid. Hindi natin masyadong sasyakin ng taong bayan na eleksyon na naman. May eleksyon na ng barangay, may eleksyon na naman para sa CONCON.
The House of Representatives has passed on second reading a resolution for a constitutional convention that will introduce amendments to the 1987 Charter. At the upper chamber, Senator Robin Hood Padilla is standing his ground against a constitutional convention but is still pushing for charter change. CONCON, Chacha, this alphabet soup is leaving a bad taste in the mouth of critics who believe that tinkering with the Constitution comes at a wrong time. We discuss all of these tonight on the Chiefs. Good evening, ako po si Robbie Alampay. Kasama po natin online Ed Linggao of One News, Ami Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief ng Philippine Star, and Lucy Cruz Valdez, Head of News 5 Chiefs. Good evening.
Good evening, Robbie.
Anong headlines natin bukas, Ami?
Gahanda na daw yung mga school na mag-remote learning for 1 week, next week. Saka mag-fill yata ng mga extra transport para sa pag natuloy naman, baka hindi matuloy kasi nakikiusap si Transport Secretary Jimmy Bautista na mag-usap daw sila sa kanyang mga nagbabalak mag-strike. So tingnan natin.
Pero kanina, naririnig natin sa mga balita, si Marvel Buena ng Manibela, malakas pa rin yung paninindigan niya na hindi, tuloy ito. Tinawag niya pang mayabang to mga nasa gobyerno.
And yung mga nakapag-form na daw ng cooperative, sabi ni Secretary Bautista, papayag naman daw na lumabas pa rin next week. So hindi natin alam kung gaano karaming sasama dyan sa strike na yan.
Pero yung mga big groups like FEDJODAP, di ba? Yung mga, hindi sila kasama di ba?
Kaya hindi natin alam.
Yeah.
Kasi malaki din ang mawawala, mga daily earners yan, di ba?
Right, yeah.
Yan lagi ang problema tuwing mag-strike.
Yung mga issues na linalatag ng Manibela, mukha namang everybody's in agreement there, di ba? Yung concerns nila about yung changing rules sa cooperative, yung ability to afford, pati yung timeline. Pero ayun nga, doon sila naghihiwa-hiwalay doon sa kung whether or not sasama sa welga. Okay, Bok, ano pang balita?
Well, BSP projection, February inflation may sell between 8.5 and 9.3, so possibly higher than last month's. So, in a way, medyo against what BSP Governor Medalla told us last night na baka nag-peak na nga inflation. Pero on the other hand,
Hindi naman niya ipupusta sweldo niya.
isang buong sweldo. Magaling siya mag-ano.
Tsaka, okay, I mean, that's not, kung magkatotoo yan, it's not going to be just higher than last month. It's going to be the highest in more than a decade.
How many years?
Naman, no?
Last month was the highest in 14 years.
Na naman yan. Yeah.
We will actually...
10 years na.
We will actually touch on that later on in the program, but first we'll speak to our first guest after a short break. The Chiefs will be right back. Proposal to amend the 1987 Charter through a constitutional convention has hurdled second reading at the House of Representatives. Let's bring in Kabayan Party List Representative Ron Salo. Congressman Salo, welcome to the Chiefs.
Magandang gabi po, Robbie. Magandang gabi, Ms. Lucci and Ms. Ami.
Sir, first of all, obviously, before we get to the content, let's talk about the format. They're calling it a hybrid constitutional convention. Ano po ang hybrid concon? What does that mean?
I understand hybrid ang tawag po dito because hindi po lahat ay elected, kundi a portion of it, 80% will be elected and 20% will be appointed. So it's hybrid. Hindi po siya purely appointed, just like dun sa 1987 Constitution, wherein everyone na naging member po noon were all appointed. Dito po, it's both elected and appointed.
Ano naman justification ng, I mean from all the discussions, no? Anong justification ng ganun karaming delegates? Dahil lang ba sa they wanted every region represented, every district represented, aside from all sectors? And does this mean that they intend to change the whole charter and not just specific provisions like the economic provisions? Ganun ba ang intent?
Personally, nag-file din po ako ng version ko and exactly the same din po dito sa lumalabas din. All districts will be represented and 20% will be coming from the party list dun sa aking proposal. But of course, dito po sa lumabas, dun sa proposal ko, it's to be elected. But dito, the House adopted a hybrid, yung binabanggit nga po natin kanina. From my point of view, as one of the proponents of this particular calling for constitutional change, kaya gusto ko lahat represented yung lahat po ng districts to give opportunities to everyone. Kasi mahirap din naman na kaunti lang, then of course, ang claimor ng marami, paano naman kami, yung mga distrito? Paano yung points of view nila? They want also to be considered. So as much as possible, from my point of view, it's more inclusive. The more inclusive it is, the better.
So ano to, overhaul, sir? Overhaul,
no, from my point of view, opo, dun sa final ko po, it's really focusing more on the economic provisions.
And you need all 304 to do that?
Well, from my point of view, it would be a lot better kasi at the end of the day, kung mas maganda kung lahat represented, so ibig sabihin po nun, more people will be able to give your points of views.
Pero sir, di ba it goes without saying that there can be no limit to whatever provision would be or could be amended or revised in a constitutional convention. In other words, even if you say that your primary focus would be economic, there really is no guarantee. There really is no way. Not saying that there should be a way to guarantee, but it's parang hindi talaga siya garantiya. There's nobody who can guarantee.
I agree with you. That's the beauty, I suppose, of a constitutional convention at the end of the day. But from my point of view, who is pushing for this particular change, my primary intention is really for economic amendment with economic provisions. Because, of course, as chairperson of the Committee on Overseas Workers Affairs, ang concern ko po talaga is to create more employment opportunities in the Philippines. Because, of course, maya't maya naririnig po natin, yung mga kabayan po natin lumalabas, and from time to time, narinig pa natin yung mga kwento ng mga masasaklap, kagaya po ng nangyari po nung nakaraan. So from my point of view, mas maganda po kung mas maraming local domestic opportunities para sa mga kabayan natin.
Ng mga initiative to change the Constitution, ang laging maharang dyan yung Senate. Wala silang interest And in this case, ang malakas lang ang interest talaga is Senator Robin Hood Padilla na ngayon nag-aalala dahil hindi niya gusto yung mga proposal na lumalabas ngayon sa House. Unang-una, yung sweldo daw na pinapropose, 10,000 per diem a day per delegate na mamahal na. Oo, sobrang mahal daw yan. So anong masasabi niyo sa mga comment ni Senator Padilla?
Well, I fully respect kung ano po yung points of views ni Senator Padilla. This is, I suppose, the beauty of democracy, for everyone has his own voice, and particularly for Senator Robin Hood Padilla, because he's a senator of the Republic, mas malakas din po yung boses po ni Senator. And of course, from my end, ever since naman po hindi po nagbago yung aking pananaw, or from my very first term, this is already in my third term, nung first term ko pa lang po, very active na po ako calling for constitutional change. So hindi naman po nagbago from my point of view. Kay Senator Robin Hood Padilla, I suppose pareho naman po yung pananaw, except that iba po yung mode na nais po tahakin po ni Senator. So I suppose parehong nagpo-push for amendments of the Constitution, except that magkaiba po nung pananaw kung ano po yung gagamitin para sa
Pero
pagbabasa.
considering the reaction of the Senate, sa tingin niyo may suporta ba ngayon? Kasi kahit si President Marcos, sinabi niya it's not a priority of his administration. Yung nakaraan si President Duterte, priority niya yan wala pa rin nangyari. So anong tingin niyo sa chances ng Chacha at this point?
Ako, hindi naman po ako nawawalan ng pag-asa for that. Sabi ko nga po sa inyo, from the very beginning, first term ko pa lang po, and this is my third term, nagpo-push po ako. Hindi po ako, I never waver. Because for me, kailangan po talagang baguhin. Ngayon, mahirap naman po kung hindi po ipupush, then wala pong pag-uusapan. But I suppose lahat naman po ito at the end of the day are just proposals. So from my point of view, mas maganda na pag-uusapan. Kasi at the end of the day din, kung ano man po yung mapag-agreehan po dyan, kung umabot po dyan sa pag-create po ng Constitutional Convention. At any rate, lahat po naman po ng i-adapt po nila are just proposals. At the end of the day, it's the people who will decide.
Pero sir, yung 10,000 pesos per day.
They should be paid 10,000 per diem, all 304 of them. Tapos, ang gastos, 9.5 billion for the elections, pati, and yun na nga, do you agree that this is something we need at this time, at that cost?
Considering yung binabanggit niyo po na cost, kung ang budget po ng Pilipinas is 5-point-something trillion, what is 9-point-something billion? It's just a drop in the bucket. And honestly, kung pinag-uusapan din po natin about opportunities, employment opportunities, the OFWs are bringing in how many? 1.5 trillion a year. Pero kung makapag-create po tayo ng domestic opportunities for here, na hindi na po nila kailangang lumabas po, what is 9 billion compared to 1.5 trillion that will be able to create domestically? But at the same time, yung binabanggit po na 10,000, I suppose malit lang naman po yun. Kung i-compare din po natin doon sa kung may staff po yan, meron po siyang etc. So kasi syempre hindi naman natin ma-expect na yung isang delegate din, siya lang mismo rin yung gagawa po noon. Kundi he would need also support members, staff members, for him to be able to craft and perform and function properly dun sa kanyang tungkulin.
Sir, could you clarify that? Because you're saying the 10,000 is not a per diem. It is their budget for staff support. Because iba po 'yon eh.
Honestly,
Or are we
Hindi
or
ko
because
po-
you're introducing the concept of staff position, do we add that onto the cost? So we now have elections, and then we now have 10,000 per diem for 304 delegates, and then on top of that, you're saying, let's be realistic, on top of the 10,000, they need budget pa to operate their ad hoc offices.
Yes, Robbie. Kasi actually hindi ko po nabasa yung any provision concerning doon sa staff support. So far, iniisip ko nga po ngayon kung 10,000 nga po yung per diem. So saan kukuha po yung ano? So most likely kung kukunin niya po ron sa 10,000, then iniisip ko masyadong malit nga po actually po yun. But nonetheless, even if it's wala na pong hindi manggagaling po doon sa 10,000 po na yun, yung 10,000 I suppose for the functions, the value of the functions that they're going to do, I suppose, kung 10,000 per day, that's definitely for me, from my point of view, that's very much justifiable.
Sir, so realistically, how much are we looking at spending for per diem, for staffing, for research, for administrative work, and as well for transportation, travel, and for accommodations? I mean, kasi baka mamaya we're only looking at 10,000, yung pala it's 10,000 out of 50,000 total per congress per con delegate. I don't know. I'm just throwing a number out there, pero realistically, what are we looking at?
Honestly, sorry, hindi ako mabot doon sa computations po na yon. So I'm just being honest, hindi ko na-compute yung details po noon. But of course, I'm just relying doon sa pinag-uusapan na 10,000 po yung per day ng bawat member.
I guess people are, we're kinukut-kut natin yung gastos because the way you put it is, ano ba naman yung 9 billion, di ba? Ano ba naman yung but a lot of people are also saying, well, gaya nga sabi po ng isang kasama nyo dyan sa Kongreso kanina, 10,000 is practically almost minimum wage for people right now. For a lot of our countrymen, it's nothing to scoff at. And they're wondering, ano bang gagastosan nitong mga to? In the meantime, the value that you're proposing people will get from charter change anyway, that's precisely what Senator Robin Hood Padilla is saying. We can get that value without calling for elections. We just call, for example, a constituent assembly, and it's still the same congressmen taking their same salaries because you're going to be convened anyway. So I'm not espousing either way or whichever format. But what Senator Robin Hood Padilla is precisely saying is that you can get the value that Congressman Salo is promising without having to call for elections, without having to provision 10,000 pesos per diem, and then spending for additional staff work that Congress and Congressman Salo has not even calculated yet.
Dito, because the Constitution is limited in the measures or modes how we can amend the Constitution. So yung una, yung binabanggit po niya, it's initiative, people's initiative. But people's initiative is very limited. Yung sa certain amendments lang. It cannot be kung pag-usapan natin lahat ng mga provisions on economic provisions, you cannot do that through a people's initiative. Pangalawa, it's a constituent assembly. At previously, when I was on my first term and second term, yan po yung pinupush, constituent assembly. Pero I understand the sentiments ng marami. Palagi sinasabi ng iba, there's a conflict of interest. Kasi kung kami rin po yung uupo at mag-amend po ng Constitution, of course, ang palaging issue dyan most likely our personal interest ang mananaig. So ngayon, we're left with the Constitutional Convention, but from my point of view, it addresses the issues of both.
Yes.
Both nung People's Initiative as well as the Constituent Assembly. Kasi at the end of the day, hindi po kami yung uupo. So mag-elect po tayo at kung hybrid, pipili po ng mga most qualified people or people who really represent those sectors that they are espousing for your specific advocacies. So ibig sabihin po nun, na-address po natin yung dalawa. So I suppose dahil may mga paumaran po siguro tayong naisip, but I suppose hindi po pasok po doon dahil may tatlo lang po na proseso na ibinibigay po sa atin yung Constitution.
Congressman, yun na nga ang isa pang tanong dyan nabanggit na rin ni President Marcos na because you are saying you are pushing for charter change for job generation. Eh sinabi na nga ni President Marcos, pwede naman yung gawin kahit walang charter change. At this point, you have passed already several laws liberalizing the investment climate, opening certain industries, in fact, a wide range of industries, to full foreign ownership, including public utilities. So, yun, isa pa rin yung tanong. Bakit kailangan natin ngayon at medyo madali yata yung pag-approve nyo on second reading? Almost kulang na lang yan in third reading, which is formality na lang. Bakit parang minamadali na naman ang House of Representatives?
Honestly, sa tingin ko hindi po ito minamadali dahil kung pag-usapan po natin yung hearings na kinandak po rito, tuloy-tuloy naman po ito. Marami na pong mga hearings and even hearings po outside. Actually, I've been always invited, but of course I also have by committee hearings on my own, kaya hindi po ako nakakadalo po doon. But from time to time, of course, I've been attending. So hindi po siya minadali kung pag-usapan niyo po yung pagmamadali dahil at the end of the day also, kung papansin po ninyo, every term na lang po ito, pinag-uusapan po ito eh. So mahaba po. Actually, tons and tons na po yung na-create po na documents concerning dito po sa tinatawag po natin na constitutional change. So I really beg to disagree kung sasabihin po natin na minadali po dahil at the end of the day, kung pag-uusapan po talaga natin, sobrang dami na po ng oras ang ginugol po rito sa pag-uusap po tungkol po dun sa charter change.
Congressman Salo, we're almost out of time. Isang tanong na lang po. Doon po sa sinasabi niyo po that an additional benefit is the representation precisely of the different districts, every corner of the country will be represented. But political scientists have also pointed out that with the way politics work here in the Philippines, especially local politics, what are the chances ng mga iboboto mo sa Constitutional Convention as delegates will have the same surnames and belong to the same clans as your colleagues in Congress?
Well, I suppose this is the value of what you're doing now. Kasi pinag-uusapan po natin, and this is, I suppose, the power of media, na kayo mismo ang tumutulong para mas maintindihan po ng mga tao that when they will be electing later on, their representatives or delegates to that particular constitutional convention, sana inform yung mga kababayan po natin na hindi the same people. Then this is our opportunity, this is our chance to completely change the political landscape. Kasi for example, Ron Salo. Sino ba naman ang boboto sa Ron Salo? Di po ba? But I had my opportunity through party list system. But we want more representations of people who have their advocacies. And this is precisely why I'm pushing also for constitutional change. Para hindi pare-pareho po yung nakikita po natin na mga pangalan sa Kongreso.
So that's an admission that it's going to go beyond economic provisions.
No,
you just said it.
Not necessarily because at the end of the day, sabi ko nga po, from my point of view, my primary reason why I'm pushing for it is it's economic. But at the same time, kagaya rin po ng binanggit ko rin po kanina, which I agree at the end of the day, kung sino po yung mga pinili po natin, they have that opportunity to make a difference.
Okay, well, Congressman Salo, we've run out of time. Iwan na po muna natin dito. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat din for the opportunity. Magandang gabi po. Thank you.
And we'll start up another conversation after this break. Keep it here on One News. Inflation is expected to remain high this month. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas projects it will settle between 8.5% and 9.3%. Let's have an economist weigh in. Joining us, Alvin Ang, Economics Department Chair of the Ateneo de Manila University. Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Chiefs.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Sir, kahapon lang kausap namin BSP Governor Medalla. Last month, we were at 8 point something. We're now projecting 8.5, 9.3%. If this comes to pass, and this will be the highest in 14 years, do you think if we haven't peaked yet, will this be the peak?
Well, most likely, based on our projections, this will be the peak. Our estimate around 9.1, so might be the peak.
9.1.
Yeah, that's our estimate. Unless, of course, may mga significant changes sa movement ng prices ngayong March, no, incoming March. Kasi our challenge basically is mataas lahat eh. Yung across the board na, no, sa core, what we call core inflation, which is excluding food and utilities, no? So mataas din yung iba, kaya medyo broad siya, kaya you have to address those.
Yes, sir. Sir, I checked again yung price monitoring ng DA. Ang tataas pa rin ng like sugar, expected it to go down already, pero it's still at 87 to 110. Rice is still 37 to 40. Pork liempo is 300 to 400. So a lot of these products we were expecting as per the DA na bababa with the importations, and parang hindi masyadong bababa. Is this what we're looking at for the next few weeks pa rin?
Well, our view siguro this March na yan, more distributed na. So hopefully it will start reflecting in the market prices na sa lahat na, no? Kasi what has happened probably is hindi pa nakalabas lahat eh. So yung pork actually tsaka yung sugar actually yun yung medyo nakapagtaka pa rin, no? Kasi matagal na bumaba.
Oo nga, sir. And we have more imports coming in pa nga eh. Aside from last year's. Nasa 110 pa rin eh. Well, 87 to 110. Big surprise.
Yeah. Kasi I think, ititignan mo kasi not all of these products naman are like rice na talagang pagka tumataas na matagal, people will complain. No? So sugar, yung onions, nung sumobrang taas, people started really complaining. So nakita niyo bumaba agad. No? So there is a big shift when it's already affecting a lot of people.
Yeah, but
in the case of sugar, kasi parang stabilized na eh.
Yeah, but Professor, what does that mean when people are not as vocal and they are not as, I think they're angry, but they're not as expressive. Let's put it that way. What does that mean? What does that signal to our policymakers, our leaders? Complete the connection lang. So, okay, hindi sila ganun kalit. They're upset, they feel it. But if they are not as upset, what happens at our level?
Ganito siguro yun, Robbie, no? Kasi hindi naman lahat yan consuming sugar, yung levels na maramihan, di ba? I mean, you buy 1 kilo, the ordinary family will probably last it for a week. Yung kung gagamitin lang sa pangkape, konting cooking. Pero if it's something that you use 3 times a day, no, and consume 3 times a day, that's something that will not be good for the consumer. And I think that's where we had this complaints on rice before. And you see the rice has not, mataas siya compared previous years, but hindi pa rin siya yung nagpahila ng inflation. In fact, ang rice inflation is flat yan, zero, nagne-negative pa nga yan. So it's not similar because in the basket of consumers, maliliit lang yung food items na yan. They comprise the bulk of the inflation basket, but rice is the biggest there. No? 10% ngayon, absolute number ng inflation is rice. 10% na eh. So the others are, maliliit lang. kaya hindi ganun ka-vocal ang tao. Pero pag mas pamasahe, mag-iingay, di ba? Kasi everyday, masakay. Yun yung ano doon.
Mr. Ang, yung government economic team, sabi nila, pare-pareho sila. Sabi nila, December pa daw. They've been saying na nag-peak na daw noong December, tapos na-move na January. Ngayon, mukhang hindi na naman matutuloy at mukhang tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung pagtaas ngayong buwan for February. What do you think is the reason kung bakit hindi pa rin na-tame yung inflation?
Well, a lot of factors, supply, talagang yung supply issue is still continuing eh. Ngayon pa lang talaga naman nag-open basically yung China. No? So yung one major source of many of our consumer items. So plus yung supply bottlenecks sa supply chain, December pa lang yun nag-umpisang lumuwag eh. So hopefully by March mag-start na mag-slow down, but it will be elevated. Our estimate is not going to be back to 4%.
Yun nga, tatanong ko sana, how much will the decline be, if ever, and how long before we get back to even anywhere near 4, which was the projected inflation?
Yun of course, it's anybody's guess kung if we're just basing it on what is known as base effect, yung you will assume all things hindi magbabago, ganito pa rin, mataas pa rin yan, elevated pa rin yan until at the end of the year, it will probably still be about close to 6%, kung base effect yung pagbabatayan natin. But then, you can do drastic measures, like yung mga sinasabi kanina ng ating mga congressmen na gagawa sila ng mga ayuda, meaning you do heavy subsidies of these regular consumption items of people. That would help, at least bring down price. I mean, yung effect niya. Yung effect niya, hindi ganun tatagal.
Sir, yung external factors, we've been talking about that for a long time. I think people understand the external forces. But how much of this is self-inflicted?
Yung nakikita natin ngayon is already part of that. It's no longer, kasi the global market has more or less stabilized in terms of fertilizer, in terms of grains. Oil prices have more or less mataas pa rin, pero it's even lower than pre-Ukraine war. So sa global, medyo nag-stabilize na. So sa atin, it's taking us some time. Kasi I think much of it is structural in our case. Hindi tayo ready kasi talagang kulang yung outputs natin sa agriculture for a long time. If you go back data, talagang ang kakulangan natin hindi nangyari last year. It has been happening for years now. Almost a decade na flat yung outputs.
Yeah, so much of it.
So ngayon na may RCEP, RCEP has been ratified. Yung ba, the much vaunted benefits, will it finally trickle down? Will it help the situation, and how much and how long before we actually feel its quote-unquote beneficial effects?
Well, Luchi, two-way street yan. So you participate, you just don't say I participate, you also have to act on it. So kailangan din yung value chain. It's really a value chain. Are you going to connect to the producers of the world, which is in this region? So if we don't join that, parang sinasabi natin kaya natin i-produce lahat, which is hindi naman talaga. So that's one way to push our industries to compete, to either to cooperate, or if you try to do it yourself, be better. Yun yung nung RCEP. It's not a promise na automatic. Merong it's the environment, and also the environment created by government, and it's also the risk-taking initiative of our private sector to compete. Hindi tayo pwedeng puro antay na government will protect us always. Hindi na mangyayari yun because our neighbors, they have been doing very well. They have recovered faster than us in this pandemic.
Mr. Ang, for the short term, what else can the government do? Kasi Nag-import na tayo ng sugar, ng onions. Well, yung onion prices bumaba, yung sugar ayaw. What else can we do? Short term lang.
Short term, I have been telling people about this. Meron naman tayong inventory mechanism pero masyadong centralized. Why don't we now tap the local governments? No, these things that are happening right now, makikita mo merong Batanes nagsobra ng bawang tinatapon. So bakit ganon? So that means walang intelligence mechanism to help each other. So if the Batanes farmers are producing so much of garlic at babagsak yung presyo, dapat bawat LGU would know ano yung pinoproduce ng kanilang mga farmers, no, anong livestock meron, gaano kadami ang stock nila, ano yung kulang nila. And this should be like a transparent mechanism na alam ng lahat. Ano ang meron, ano ang wala, and then let's share information. So, inventaryo na alam ng lahat, hindi inventaryo ang nakakaalam lang yung central authorities natin. That's the reason why hindi yung signal nagiging malinaw. So dapat decentralized but transparently known centrally. So everybody knows who has and who does not have anything. You know? So para pwedeng pwedeng cross cross regions, cross provinces. Kasi pag tinignan natin yung data ng agriculture sa Philippines, the output of agriculture, it's not equal across the country, no? Iba-iba talaga. For example, onion is very prevalent in regions 1, 2, and 3 lang. So sa iba, wala yan. So kasaba is very prevalent in ARMM. So wala naman sa iba. So parang ganun. Pechay, marami sa Bicol. So dapat kung alam natin kung sino yung mga nagpo-produce nun, pwede pa natin ibaba yun to the level of the local governments and share information. That is something can be done short term. We have the internet to do that. It does not take so much money to interconnect all this information.
Pero sir, I suppose kailangan may kumukumpas. I mean, somebody has to take charge of networking everybody para at least everybody's speaking the same language in the same medium. Who's supposed to do that? The Agriculture Department? Di ba?
Dapat silang gumagawa nun. Kaya lang at this moment, medyo overwhelmed na sila. No? So maybe the interior local government can come in and do it. So anyway, they are sharing information across LGUs. Or it can even be done by the association of LGUs, the ULAP, the LMP. It doesn't have to be government itself. You know, it can be done by the private sector providing the network. It's konting, sa akin madaling isipin yun, nasa nakadimisan, mag-isip lang, no? Imagination lang sana yun. But you know, we haven't tried it, no?
Sir, also you've well, at least briefly kanina, you mentioned the need for restructuring. Could you expound on that? What kind of restructuring do we need? And are you looking at the kind of restructuring that would require, for example, charter change?
Siguro hindi yung charter change kasi na yan parang ang daming beses natin na ni-raise yan, it can be there, it can not be there. Marami ng batas na naipasa that we just have to implement. For example, we have passed the public service law.
Exactly.
Which allows us already to, some kind of, meron ka ng meron ka ng open economy doon, di ba? So bakit hindi muna natin implement yun? Tingnan mo muna kung mag-work. Hanggang ngayon, wala pa IRR yun
Sige, sir. Okay, sir. Go on. So what kind of economic restructuring are you looking at?
Well, the restructuring, what we need is really, if you look at the output of our economy, it's highly skewed towards services. And, if in a service economy, yung quality ng services mo are put into question. Kasi yan yung competitiveness ng Philippines is in services. But then, we cannot say na pababayaan namin yung agriculture, pababayaan namin yung industry. There has to be a certain level of agriculture that we should have, like for our own food security. And also to a certain extent, our manufacturing that would provide us connections to the value chains. Otherwise, service provider tayo. So, but that service provider requirement is very skill intensive. That means for you to be the service provider of the world, you have to produce a lot of people with high skills, a lot of flexibility. The Filipinos is known, around the world for that. But then yung skill ang nawawala, no? Yung flexibility nandyan tayo. Yung skill ang mahirap. And then so ang laki ng investment na kailangan to maintain that. So the restructuring I'm trying to say is that hindi natin dapat pabayaan that we continue to go on services. Kasi ang nangyayari, if you look at the economy, the service that is leaving us is really yung mga low skill type of services.
Yes.
Wholesale retail, accommodation, transportation. These are ordinary general services, and that's where our economy is huge.
Professor, you mentioned the Public Service Act that really opened up so many sectors without having to touch the Constitution. Nabanggit nyo rin po yung sa agriculture, na huwag natin din iiwan. But one major structure there is agrarian reform, and that has a lot of people have already acknowledged that's hamstrung our ability to industrialize agriculture. It's hamstrung our ability to scale up agricultural production and to build scale. Do we have enough in our arsenal, in our legislative options, to allow that to happen, the scaling up of farmlands and open up the industrialization possibilities there?
Well, siguro yung when you try to say yung yung scaling up, business environment prevent you to scale up. Yun lang yung mga lupa na nasa agrarian reform, hindi naman lahat yun eh. So ang ibig sabihin lang nun, if the farmers can see productivity, which again, I think it is a function of transparent and well-informed market system. Magiging competitive. Kaso ang mga farmers natin, nag-aantay eh.
Okay. Whose fault is that? Because, sir, ang tagal na natin pinag-uusapan talaga itong problema sa agriculture sector. No? Hanggang ngayon nga, hindi pa natin ma-figure out ano ba talaga nangyari dun sa sibuyas na yan at tumaas ng 700. No? Hindi mo na alam kung sinusihin mo, di ba? Because the farmers kept saying na sila yung dehado dito. And yet you're saying, masyado na tayong matagal na protectionist. Hindi na makita kung saan ba ang sakit nito? If you're saying we have to restructure and move away from service-driven na economy, how do we plow it back? How do we move us to productivity? I mean, actual production-dependent economy. How do we get the farmers to produce more? How do we make it profitable for them to keep their farms and not sell them to people who can develop them into villages, which is now happening? What exactly is wrong with us that we keep discussing and recommending the same things, and yet we're still where we are? I want to start now with the bawang. The sibuyas, have we figured out what happened there so that something like that does not happen again, at the very least in the near future?
Yeah. Tama ka, Lucy. Actually, if you look at the data, may datos naman tayo eh. You look at the production data. In 2020, the onion was one of our highest output in agricultural products.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So ibig sabihin, nag-oversupply tayo. So dapat yung signal na yun nalaman ng ordinaryong magsasaka. No, that means that signal did not go down to them. So tinake advantage yan nung nasa gitna, no? Or kung sino mang saan mang parte, no? So ibig sabihin, as long as information is not directly going into the producer, meron ka palaging palagi kang may ganyang opportunity na nagkakaroon ka ng late response, no? Delayed yung pick up. So
who's supposed to tell them who's supposed to, to tell farmers, teka muna, sumusobra na ang production nyo ng isang crop. Nagkukulang na tayo sa isa.
Dapat gawain ng DA yun. Ano? So, dapat na i-report yun. Yun nga ang katakataka in this age of technology and almost instant news. Kahit na sino nakakaalam ng information kagad, itong mga bagay na to dapat nakalaman din ng lahat eh. So, nowcast dapat yung mga information sa market.
Well, Mr. Ang, in the meantime, still on economic development, ang pinagkakaabalahan ng gobyerno is the Maharlika Investment Fund. Malinaw na ba sa inyo exactly what it is and what they intend to do? And do you think it will actually help considering the shape that is at, well, whatever shape you consider?
Well, sa nakikita natin, di ba, it keeps on evolving. So, let's see until anong ba talagang maiiwan na ano dyan. Kasi the idea of a wealth fund, hindi naman yan panacea. You want it if you have the wealth, no? But then, at the moment, siguro, hindi muna siya yung priority mo unless, you really want to attract another way of investing in the country. No? So that could be an option. But again, the mere fact that it keeps on changing, we still don't know ano ba talaga yung magiging final phase niya. Yung mga colleagues natin sa FEF have already said something about it, no? So wag niyo lang lagyan ng government fund. So it can be it can be a vehicle for investment. But then basta wag guaranteed, parang mga gano'n, di ba? Yun yung mga kailangan nating malinaw diyan eh. Kasi marami naman na tayong options eh. So if that can be another option, why not? But as long as walang subsidy, walang guarantee, I think that would help. Kasi at this time, our immediate problem is high prices. So we have to deal with that first. No? Yun muna. Baka yun ang mas kailangan natin lagyan ng pondo, paano natin mapoproduce yung mga goods and services na kailangan ng economy na affordable, hindi ganito kataas. By the way, no, hindi nyo siguro kung tinitingnan niyo yung labor data, we have our unemployment rate is at the lowest, no? The number of employed people right now is even higher than pre-pandemic levels. That's how
Could that be a cause of inflation? I mean, that people are now normalizing in terms of their, of their lifestyle, of their work, and the demand is high. No, how big a factor is that in pushing inflation up?
Yeah, it can, no? Kasi siyempre if they have work, they have money, di ba? So they can buy goods and services because of that. So that's also one. But hindi naman hindi naman siya, tingin ko ganun nakalaking impact pa sa prices of goods and services yung may trabaho yung mga tao, no? Mas maraming may work. Ang natin dito, ang concern na natin is the quality of that work. So is that pa yan, natira pa yan ng mga Christmas contractuals? Tingnan natin. So we have to see data of March and February kung nagpo-continue tong trend na ito. If this, because it has been happening since October. Tuloy-tuloy yan.
Yes.
We have almost close to 5 million more people working than pre-pandemic. No? Actually, that could also explain why na hindi masyado ring nagko-complain yung mga tao kasi they have money. I mean, they have work so they can buy, no? They can pay for some of their needs. So, but then, ayun nga, is this part of the because nag-open up ka ng economy, daming business nagbukas uli, meron pa tayong pent-up demand na naiwan sa travel, sa tourism. So, and then, ang question is, hanggang kailan niya?
Okay. Professor Ang, sir, maraming salamat po.
Thank you, sir.
Professor Alvin Ang is the chair of the Department of Economics at Ateneo de Manila University. And that's all we have for the Chiefs. We hope what was discussed will keep the conversation going. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Mami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5.
I'm Ed Lingao. We are One News, all sides, all the time.